Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video, we're going to be going over a Black Widow Jeep Wrangler. First and foremost though, I do want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Kunani for filming me this Black Widow Jeep Wrangler. I'm going to include a link to her Instagram in the description down below. And then on a side note, if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. Let's get right into this review. Let's start things off by popping under the hood of the Black Widow Wrangler. So the engine option that you'll see most commonly in the Black Widow Wrangler is going to be the 3.6 liter V6. It's good for 285 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque. But I'm sure if you wanted to do the turbocharged 4-cylinder with this package, then I'm sure they would do that. Maybe they'll even do it on a 392 Wrangler. Who knows? But V6 is the engine that you'll see under the hood with these Black Widows. And then you can see here, with the two Jeeps next to each other, just crazy with the stance. And notice how you've got the fender flare extensions just like the Extreme Recon, so that it can actually fit the entire tire and wheel setup. Definitely looks aggressive from an appearance standpoint. It's crazy. Like, look at that. But those are actually added on after the fact. So you can see this is before the Jeep was actually taken through pre-delivery inspection. So there's some things on that are not on this that you guys could see were on it. But anyways, Black Widow Wrangler, 3-inch lift, 37s. And the thing that Black Widow usually does, they put big wheels. So you're going to see 22s on most of these Black Widow Wranglers. And then you can see with 37, super aggressive from a tread pattern perspective. And then they also add Fox shocks to it to help out with the suspension stability. And then they will, because they lift and everything, right, you're going to have to do a speedo recalibration. And you can see this one has the custom front bumper with the Black Widow logos and the winch and the LED light bar. There's a lot going on there from a front end perspective. And on top of the speedo recalibration, right, this also does come with a warranty, that's one of the big things about the Black Widow packages, is you're getting all these, modifications that actually have a warranty to back them. And then you'll see later in the video, custom interior, there's custom gauge cluster, all that kind of stuff. So, just like a normal Black Widow build, you guys have seen me review like the F-150s and everything. It's just that same build pretty much, but on a Wrangler instead. I will say I really dig the bumper. I kind of want that for my Jeep now that I'm looking at this, because again, aggressive with the appearance, and then having the light bar, which is kind of adds to the practicality overall. And also the thing I want to mention is you guys can see synthetic cable with the winch. That's a lot safer than using old steel cable. But here's the wheels. Really cool from an aesthetic perspective. That's the Black Widow logo there in the center portion of the wheel itself. And I think they do a good job from a design perspective. Now, obviously, this is like a mall crawler build, and they kind of know that making this, right? This is the all show and no go build. You could take it off road. Here's the Fox shocks you can see there, and still they don't do anything to the axle, so still solid front axle, right? You can see the springs and everything there. It's always crazy. The Wrangler setup just looks so crazy because everything's exposed. I think it's so cool how they do that. And then you've got the venting here on the hood as well, which is another cool aesthetic. And notice the service tag, because again, this hasn't been through PDI. Black Widow logo there on the side. And you'll notice kind of the theme where they put as many Black Widow logos as possible. Notice it's built off a Sport. So that is the Rubicon hood on it. So they basically just put a Rubicon hood on a Sport. And building it off of the Sport means that basically lower cost of entry for the package, right? But on top of that, really means this is a mall crawler, right? Not trying to bag on the package too much, because it has off-road tires. It's got these rock rails too, as you can see. But big but, right? And those are deployable sites. But you could. The point I'm trying to make with those steps is you could use them for two things: steps and rock rails. Man, I'm getting so sidetracked in today's voiceover. But yeah, with the Sport, you don't have front and rear lockers like a Rubicon. You don't have a sway bar disconnect. And so if you take this off-road, you got 4-wheel drive, right? But that's all you're doing is 4-wheel drive. You don't have any of the cool, fancy off-road tech to, save you, basically, is the point that I'm trying to make. And so, yeah, it's a cool looking build, I'd have to say. And the shocks are going to help with on-road ride quality. It's just that there's not a lot of off-road application with this. There's a lot of stuff that this would be able to do just because of the extra ground clearance and because of the tires. But yeah, trust me, like I've done enough that front rear lockers and a swipe bar disconnect, they make a world of difference. Now you got the reinforcement here. This is actually a Jeep accessory, and that's to reinforce the tailgate so they can hold a bigger spare tire. That's another big thing with this. And so you guys will notice with the Black Widow packages, they'll have like a combination of parts from a lot of different manufacturers and they put together. And so it's similar to like a build that you would do personally on a vehicle. And so that's why like I see people all the time. They're like, oh, well, I can just do this myself for less money. And it's like, yes, but again, they make sure that the parts they're putting together, right, all make sense in conjunction with each other from a ride quality perspective. And if they do build an off-road package, right, they make sure that it makes sense from an off-road package perspective. But more on that, right? It's also, covered under warranty, whereas with these individual parts, you might not necessarily have warranties with certain things. So that's definitely something to consider. I love how it has a Jeep grill on the spare tire carrier. That is so cool. It's a little mini Jeep that's looking back at people all the time as you're driving this around. That is hilarious. But it's good that they give you a full-size spare, right? Receiver hitch down below. And you guys can see the giant muffler. It's funny that this doesn't have a huge engine and they still do a giant muffler. I just had a hiccup there, by the way. Sorry about that. Solid rear axle as well. The Wrangler, I mean, now that I think about it, the Wrangler is really the only off-road SUV that still uses a solid front axle. Mercedes G-Wagon, independent front suspension. Ford Bronco, independent front suspension. Land Rover Defender, that's independent suspension all around. So yeah, this is like the last man standing for like old school off-road tech. It's another kind of like cool draw to the Wrangler, I will say that. And last thing I want to mention as we go from this to the interiors, I wish there would have been body painted fender flares on it and the body painted top. I think that would have looked a little bit better, but again, it's built off of sport, so you're kind of limited with what you can do. But moving from the exterior to the interior here, this is the rear of the Wrangler. So something to mention is, I forgot to mention earlier, is there is some red interior lighting like in the footwells and everything. We'll show that portion a little bit later, but that's another thing with the Black Widow package. I love how they show the JL series there on the tailgate. It's another cool add-on with it. And you also notice, since this is a four-door, storage space is really good in the rear. The difference between the two-door and the four-door is actually rear storage space, believe it or not. If you get a two-door, the rear seat space is pretty similar to the four-door. It's the trunk space that you lose, actually. So it's kind of interesting what you give up for a little bit of a better breakover angle, basically. And, maybe a little bit on the approach and departure, but mostly the breakover angle. Anyways, here's the rear seating area. So you got the cup holders with the window controls in the center, normal Wrangler fashion. They don't really keep anything on the door panels themselves because you can take the doors off, right? You've got the handle and stuff. And you can see how the body painted portion pops here to the interior. Also notice with the seats, you can see the custom stitching throughout the seats. I think that is a cool aesthetic as well. And then notice here with the, also Sport comes with cloth seats. This has leather seats, so that's a big thing with the Black Widow package, right? They keep the mirror adjustments on the door panel still. I think that's interesting. Cargo net down below, right? That's something that I actually didn't think I'd care about, but now having a Jeep, I actually like it. You can just throw like water bottles and stuff there. I love how they bring the body colored portion into the dash in the interior. Got the light control there. And then notice the pedal layout down below. And again, like I said, there's lighting that they have, ambient lighting, which is great. And you can see the pedal layout, nothing too fancy or anything like that. Should do rubber floor mats, not carpeted floor mats, but again, it's a Sport, so it's kind of like, what do you expect, right? And then you can see the seats are manually adjustable. It doesn't matter what Wrangler you get, the seats are always going to be manually adjustable. And then you can see the stitching there on the seat itself. Again, in that cool kind of like cross-stitched design, right? It's a little bit more complex. And then, of course, got the Black Widow logo at the top. Very, very important, right? Always got to flex that you're driving the Black Widow. And then here's the dash infotainment system. So this does have the bigger infotainment system for the Wranglers, which is great. And then notice the climate controls down below, heated seats. So they do like a loaded up Sport S is what it would be off of. So that's why you've got the dual zone climate, heated seats. You can see all the window controls, auxiliary switches. But yeah, notice, again, no controls for front and rear lockers or sway bar disconnect, but notice you still get four-wheel drive. So, you know, you can pop into four-wheel drive when you need to drive over the curb at the mall, right? To flex that you're driving a Jeep with big old tires, right? Love the little Jeep there on the shifter. That's another cool Easter egg. And notice, again, they more body painted portion here in the center on the cup holders. I think that's pretty cool when manufacturers do that. If it's a, like, this color works because it's like a gray. If it was like pink or something, I'm not sure about that. I don't know if I'd want too much, because my Wrangler's pink, and I don't know if I'd want even more pink in the interior. Anyway, center console. This is something that I am gonna like judge the Jeep for a little bit. I wish that Jeep made their center console and glove box situation larger, because you can't fit anything in either of them. Like, the owner's manual fits in the center console, doesn't fit in the glove box. The owner's manual, right? Like, where else are you supposed to put it? It's so bizarre to me that Jeep did it that way. I was like, oh, maybe I should just not have the owner's manual on my Jeep because it can't fit. And then you can see here at the top, notice no insulation on this. That's something that I would do as like my first upgrade, is I'd add the roof insulation. I've got it on my Wrangler, and it makes a huge difference with highway noise, wind noise, just all that stuff. It's definitely worth it. And also, like, if you live in either a really hot climate or a really cold climate, right? More insulation is better. Especially if you are from a older generation, then you know with like houses, like the difference it makes with having just even a little bit more insulation with like you know, your heating bill, for example. But you can see there with all of the top mechanisms. So the first part you can take off with just those little latches. I've done it, and then the back you do have to use tools to take it off. Not too difficult though. Super simple process overall. And yeah, that is pretty much everything for this Black Widow Wrangler. Also, there was a spider web on it. I included this clip because it's a Black Widow and it has a spider web. That's hilarious. But let me know what you guys think.